Hello, this is Dread from Epic Builds, and in today's video topic, we will go over Cold Dot Maelstrom Werebear, one of my favorite builds of the patch already. This build is very easy to set up and dominate monos with, and has a lot of investment potential in regards to sealed affixes. Before we get into the video, if you've been enjoying the video, I suggest to leave a like on the video, as that's the best way to support the channel currently. So Maelstrom was buffed significantly this patch. It had its maximum possible stacks reduced slightly, but its base damage and added damage effectiveness has been raised, which has effectively buffed it significantly. Since each individual Maelstrom stack is stronger, and sources of Maelstrom stacks like Warcry and the self-cast node that lets you get multiple per cast, it means that we end up with much more damage for less effort than before, making this a much better skill overall. And I'm actually proud of EHG for being able to fix one of the skills I loved but couldn't suggest to people as it was too bad before the patch. We also have access to Entangling Roots. This was changed significantly from its prior iterations, and here we're using it to apply a cold dot debuff on enemies, which lock them in place for about 2 seconds and scales damage the longer it stays on enemies. This literally solves any clear issues we have, meaning that Maelstrom is actually our single target DPS skill. Never thought I'd actually ever say that. These two skills combined with the significant amount of flat adaptive spell damage granted from strength stacking inside Werebear with Wizened Claws, it means we get a large amount of flat damage we normally wouldn't have access to. This lets us dual wield a scepter and an axe, meaning we can attack faster in Werebear form and gain more Maelstrom stacks on a single target, boosting our single target DPS significantly. The only unique I suggest you to use to start out with without turning anything legendary yet is Tempest Maw. This axe gives us 6 strength and attunement, which helps us reach our minimum of 60 attunement for Maelstrom to do more damage, and also gives us a hefty amount of flat, giving us 6 from the strength, 20 from the weapon itself, and 15 on the passive tree from the axe node that triples your adaptive spell damage from 5 to 15. We then run Spell Leech from Rai, the Blessing. The sustain on this build is absolutely ridiculous. Even on a single target, we end up leeching our entire life pool back within seconds just by spamming our abilities, and makes breezing through monoliths that much easier. We combine this all with a little bit of armor stacking inside the Druid tree. We use the nodes that apply a thorn shield on us at a 10% chance when an enemy hits us. Then we use Spriggan Form to adjust the armor up, and thanks to all the strength we have. We do use the vines summoned from Entangling Roots and Garden of Rage inside Spriggan Form to sustain most of our rage, and also have 10 rage on kill / hit on rare or unique enemy, as well from Werebear Form, which keeps us topped off. Now, we actually have a little bit of room in the intro. I don't want to address something. So recently, I have been called out for pretty much saying that I didn't like the Druid forms in the first day of the patch, and that's mainly just because, I didn't understand the Druid forms. I will say that right now. I apologize for being too quick to judge the forms, but there are a lot of bugs that attributed to that as well. And also, so not knowing that you could use Garden of Rage while outside of Spriggan Form didn't help either. And I did not think that was an intended mechanic, but I did ask the devs, and they said that the Garden of Rage mechanic of giving you rage with your vines is an actual thing they want in the game, and they said that if it's too OP, they'll probably nerf it next patch, which was one of the biggest things I was holding back on because I did not believe that was an intended mechanic, but it is. So that makes the class overall much better to play. With all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? All right, here we are in game with the build. So this time, normally I'd do a skill rotation, but generally what you want to do on single target is to roar to get your Maelstrom stacks up, upheaval always as well to get your Entangling Roots. I can't really show you that much because of the way the mana works, because you'll eventually run out. Because the problem is you kind of have to wait a few seconds for the poisonous vines to go off. And of course, the rage on kill helps a lot too to get this thing started. And on bosses, we also have 10 rage on hit. So generally, anything that isn't the dummy, this build does completely fine against. All right, with that being said, let's talk about skills, shall we? So for Werebear form, we take 2 points travel into territorial, because the area for Maul doesn't really matter. 2 points into Fury of the Maul, so we can maul more often, so we can create more Entangling Roots. 3 points into Pummel and Bash Travel. We don't care about the Maul melee damage at all, so that we can get 2 Woodland Bears, so that whenever we use Maul, we cast Entangling Roots for ourselves, which is really strong. And that's all over clear right here. Then 1 point travel into Ruthless, although the reduced decay rate is nice. 1 point into Frenzied Strikes. We don't really need the rage on swipe, but it's nice. 1 point into Wizened Claws. This is the whole build is built around as you get a bunch of flat damage just by stacking strength, which is one of Druid's specialties now. And of course, 4 points into Ursine Storm to make it so that we have a chance to cast Maelstrom on swipe use, which is really, really nice on swipe hit, because it allows us to scale even more Maelstroms on a single target and gives us more extra DPS scaling. So we just run something with attack speed and we get a few more Maelstroms on single target. And like I said, with the buffs, each individual Maelstrom is so much better now. And of course, 5 points into Invigoration. This makes it so that when we're in Monoliths, we can start the chain, because once you have like 12 vines from Entangling Roots, you're completely fine on rage generation. But to get that started, you do need a little bit of rage on kill. And of course, it gives you health on kill as well, which is nice to sustain. And of course, the health rage on boss hit is really strong because it allows us to sustain our rage on a boss by swiping them, of course, and Entangling Roots them. So that's really nice. And that's pretty much it for Werebear. Now for Warcry here, we take 1 point into Staggering Roar travel, 1 point into Kinetic Scream travel, 2 points into Shredding Howl travel, 1 point into Shallow Breath so that we can cast it more often, 1 point into a Juggernaut, 1 point travel into Berserker so we can enable Berserker stacks for ourselves. Now to do Berserker stacks, you need to use your Warcry, of course, then hit the enemy, and you can't just stop hitting the enemy, or otherwise you lose Berserker stacks. So it generally benefits you for being able to sit on top of an enemy and maul them to death, pretty much, which is really nice, which is what we do anyways. And we take 2 points into Brutality for extra stacks and duration, which is nice. And of course, 2 points out of 3 for Fury Strikes. If you have +1 to Warcry or +1 to skills, this is like the mod for you, because we want even more attack speed. This is partly how we scale our single target with our Maelstrom, which is nice. Of course, 1 point travel into Breath of Aterra, then 4 points into Whirlpool, so that whenever we use our War and Werebear form, we get a bunch of Maelstroms, which is helping us reach up to a lot of Maelstroms for a single target. And that's pretty much it for Warcry. Like I said, if you had plus the skills, I would run +1 skill into this, and then eventually more skills into Frostclaw for increased damage, and that's it for plus the skills. Then for Maelstrom itself, this has completely changed somewhat. The autocast node is no longer a thing. It has been replaced with this node here, Beneath the Waves. Makes it so we can cast like 3 extra Maelstroms every few seconds. This will be very, very, very important later on when I want to play a self-cast Maelstrom build for now. But for now, for the Werebear version, we take 4 points into Whirlpool for the duration. More Maelstroms, the better, especially now that each individual Maelstrom is so much stronger. Then 5 points into Turbulence. This is the whole reason we're scaling Attunement, because we get 40% more extra damage on top of that. There is not that much damage scaling inside Maelstrom. The only other more damage scaling is either totem related here, or it is this node, which is really terrible because it takes 3 points to get to it, and then it only gives you 5% more damage. Because are you really ever freezing things? Really? Then 2 points into Calm. Our Rage Sustain is so insanely strong, we actually don't need more points into this. Then 1 point to Windswept for the haste, of course, and the Frenzy as well. The attack speed helps us stack more stuff on bosses, stack more Maelstroms on bosses, and of course the haste allows us to move through monoliths quickly and makes our clear feel buttery smooth. Then 2 points travel into Arctic Chill. The chill chance is nice, especially against bosses. Then of course 5 points into Eye of the Storm for 100% more damage. This is absolutely insane. This was buffed from, I think, I don't know if this was buffed. No, it wasn't buffed. Yeah, it was just, it's the same as it was before. But we are only using our Maelstrom for single target, so we don't really care about the area for clear, which is really nice. And of course, since Entangling Roots handles our clear, we don't really care about the area, right? And that's pretty much it for Maelstrom. Now for Spriggan Form here, this is requiring a little bit of knowledge about how these interactions work. So mainly we're taking points travel into 3 points into Garden of Rage. It gives us rage per second per active vine. And this is global. This is not just in Spriggan Form. So we are creating vines through Entangling Roots here, through Poisonous Seeds. We'll create seeds whenever we maul, which are these little things. They'll pop out, which I'll show you in a second. I'm waiting. There you go. They'll pop out and then create little doodads, right? Which is really good for us because the little doodads, they give us rage per second, which helps us sustain our rage. Now, as we do more and more mauls, we'll get more and more, Entangling Roots. Now, for my build, I actually use Entangling Roots for damage, so I have a lot more points elsewhere. But for you to use Entangling Roots just for yourself, for your rage sustain, you actually don't need like all this damage. You could put more points into Poison Seeds and then much more quickly get the rage back. Obviously, since this build I require all the other nodes to actually deal damage with Entangling Roots, that's not possible with this build. Hence why we got to run the rage on kill to kickstart the process, right? And then after that, we go for the Thorn Shield synergy. So there is a node inside the Druid passive tree here. It's called Thicket of Thorns. It's 10% chance to get a Thorn Shield on you when hit. This Thorn Shield has a base of 30 armor, which is not really that impressive, but thanks to the Spriggan Form, we get the duration here. And of course, the 5 points in a Terra's Bulwark, which gives us a bunch of flat per Thorn Shield. This is per Thorn Shield, and this applies to global Thorn Shields, so everywhere, no matter what happens. And this, combined with our large amount of strength, it gives us a lot of armor. Most of the time when I'm running through the monoliths, I'm up to like 60% armor, which is really, really good. So, really good. Because it's just extra DR, right? It makes up for the fact we're so low on HP and all that. And that's pretty much it for Spriggan Form. And of course, for Entangling Roots here, of course, we grab these nodes, like I said, for the Rage Sustain. We take 2 points travel to Shredding Vines, then 1 point into Winterthine Torns, which turns this into Cold Shred. So it just gives us 10% more damage against trash when we hit them, which is nice. And of course, we have Cold Shred, a blessing. So like on single target, this does help us stack up. Then of course, this converts all of our damage into cold for our Entangling Roots, which means that we can scale it with Maelstrom as well. And it's an elemental damage source, so it's elemental damage over time we can apply, which is really nice. Then 3 points in Entrapped if you had a +2 to a +2. I only have a +1, which I suggest you get a +2. You can put 4 points into this, which increases the immobilized duration. So what happens is I attack and then things will get hit and they'll be immobilized for about, so the base duration is like 1.5 seconds. This gives you about 80%, 60% duration, which is kind of like, it's like 0.6 something, 0.75, which makes them pretty much immobilized for 2 seconds, which is a very long time. Pretty much long enough to kill them. Then 1 point into Reclamation. This is part of your leech. Eterra's Roots, all of the Entangling Roots, all this leech, all this damage you're dealing. If you do damage to like 20 enemies, you'll leech all that health back, which is one of the reasons why this is so good in higher monoliths, because you just leech so much. And this is combined with the blessing here, the Black Sun here, the health leech as well. This will carry you until you get into that. Yeah, this will carry your leech until you get into that. And of course, 4 points into Noxious Grass, so we deal more damage over time. Then 4 points into Lethal Spines. This is the thing that accelerates per second. This gets exponentially better as the roots last per second. So we actually get a bunch of more damage up to like it's like, it's about like 160% more damage from this node for the last tick, which is a lot of damage as it scales. Then 1 point into Overgrown Garden, which puts a cooldown on it, but it doesn't matter for us because we actually bypass the cooldown with our E, with our Maul. As you can tell here, we actually bypass the cooldown. Waiting, bam. So we bypass the cooldown throughout that way, and it just gives us a bunch of damage in an area, which is what we need to make sure that we're clearing monoliths so our Maelstrom can do the single target job. And that's pretty much it for the skills. Now for the passives here. We take 8 points into natural attunement. We want as much attunement as possible to reach that 60 cap. So we're grabbing attunement instead of HP here. 6 points out of 10, 8 for primal strength. We want as much strength as possible because you got to remember every single strength is a flat point of damage for our skills. Then 1 point into harmony of blades so we can dual an axe. This is important later. Then 5 points into wisdom of the wild travel, although increased damage is nice. Then 5 points into elder branches brings us to another 15 flat as well. Think of it like 15 strength. That's a lot of flat since we are using an axe. Then 5 points into berserker for the one-shot defense, which is really nice. Then for shaman, we take 1 point travel into shamanic infusion. Later on, if you can like jingle jamble your stuff around, you can actually like put more points into it and benefit from the penetration. Then 4 points into silent protector. I actually like this node because it's like an extra thorn shield per se when we have a totem out. Since we have so much strength, this is actually giving us like 300 to 400 strength when our totem is out, which is a lot of armor for just one totem, which is really, really nice. Then 5 points into Totemic Fury for the attack speed. The faster we attack on single targets, meaning the more times we hit, which means more Maelstroms on single target, which means more single target TPS. So the faster we attack, the better. Then it's your stereotypical setup with the shaman, with the Beastmaster tree here. We're just using aspect of the shark stuff. We're in aspect of the boar. Since we're swiping all the time for Maelstrom stacks, we get the aspect of the boar up. Pretty much your stereotypical setup. One nice thing is this is strength, so this gives you flat walls, so giving you DR. Absolutely OP. Then for Druid here, we take 3 points travel into Chitinous Plating, 5 points into Thicket of Thorns, like I said, for the Thorn Shield, like I explained earlier, 5 points into Primordial Residence. This is a new thing they added this patch where, like, if you put in a certain amount of points and skills, you get, like, the bonus. So you get 10% LE Pen, which is really strong for DoT skills. Pen is always really strong for DoTs because it's just a percentage more damage because you can't crit with DoT skills. So you need as much scaling as possible. Then 7 points into Druidic Prowess. We get like 8 strength and 8 attunement from this node, which helps us significantly. 3 points into Focus Wrath. We don't really care about the reduced rage decay because we have so much rage like regen, it doesn't matter. Then 1 point in Raincore makes it so when you're like looking at items or you're in the shop, makes it so you don't run out of rage, which is nice. Very good for a 1 pointer. Then 8 points into Harmonious Wisdom. This makes it so since we're stacking all of this attunement, we can actually get some defenses out of it, which means we are capped on Crit Avoid, which means we don't have to run Crit Avoid on most of our gear, which means it saves our suffixes for other important things. And then 8 points into Fiercing Gale. This is absolutely insane. This is the reason we are cold damage. 24% pin. That is an entire atrophies for reference. It is really, really strong. I can't like say this enough. 3% cold pen per node. It's like really strong. Then 5 points into Impervious. Now, I am running Impervious because I am attacking a lot and I'm using this to kill bosses and stuff like that. You can either run Impervious if you're actively attacking with swipe, or if you want to just, use Maelstrom with like the Warcry and all that, you're a lot more lazy. I would put points in a hide skin instead, so you're just tankier. But I like Impervious myself. That's my thing. There's not enough points in the world to take hide skin with where it is, and it's like just difficult to make that even work. And as you mess around with your gear, you can put more points into attunement, take points out of attunement, put points into strength. You can kind of like mess around with your gear until you get the desired like attributes. Mainly, like I said, you want the 60 attunement. That's the break point. That's when you want to stop. You don't want more than 60 attunement because you want to be crit avoid, which is like 60 plus attunement, which will be like 60% crit avoid, then of course you could run like a 36% chance on like one of your items as well for more crit avoid, which means you're almost capped, which is plenty. So you don't really need more than 60. So try to stay around 60, just play with it. But if you go under 60 once, like 59, you will no longer get that more damage. So being over 60 is better than being under 60. And that's pretty much it for the passives. Now for the gearing. So for idols, technically you want increased spell damage if you have an active totem for one of these. Then you want to slam the rest of these with increased spell damage if you have an active totem. This gives you all of your increased damage. As you can tell, I have a lot of resistance idols helping me out. But obviously later on with better gear, you don't have to do this and you run more increased damage idols. But that's one nice thing is this build doesn't require many idols except for specifically the chance to summon Thorn Totem on hit idol, which allows us to get the attack speed from the from the Shaman tree, while also giving us the armor, while also giving us the increased damage. So Thorn Totem on hit is definitely an upgrade that you definitely want later on. You can get spell damage while transformed, that works just as well, and you can also get damage over time while transformed, which is just as strong. It's just I like the spell damage if you have an active totem because it means we can run Thorn Totem support and just run all that stuff in Shaman. Then for the helmet, this is your perfect helmet probably. You can swap that attunement out for strength, or like you kind of like flip-flop between them depending on how much attunement you have. You kind of like play around. The ivory cowl is a perfect base for you because it gives you 5 strength, which is 5 flat as well. You do want +2 Entangling Roots eventually so you can have extra duration. Then of course obviously endurance. This amulet, I rolled this amulet a while back, just gives us a bunch of LMB damage over time, a lot of increased damage, and of course resistance. You could put this on a better base if you get lucky. My gear is not the best, as you can tell. So this, that -3 mana cost isn't as noteworthy, so you could go for damage over time, spell damage, cold damage, and of course the attack speed. The suffixes don't matter that much. Like you could run chill and slow, and that will apply to like your Entangling Roots as well when you do the hit, because it hits first and then applies the dot. So like that could work. But mainly you just want your prefixes to be good. You can run Obsidian Scepter. You can run the Scepter with damage over time on it. There are a lot of things you could run. I just went with an Obsidian Scepter because you want as much flat as possible to make Maelstrom do as much damage as possible on single target. The chest, strength. I got really lucky with this chest. Strength, attunement, or vitality, depending on if you need attunement or not. And then HP. You want it on the movement speed base. I did not get lucky in that regard. So one thing to note, I'm going to have better gear overall generally in the upcoming few builds because I've been getting really lucky with crafts and stuff like that. And it's going to be much better than this. I just did not have good crafting luck with this build. And then Tempest Maw. You can turn this into a legendary, get the attack speed. That would be absolutely fantastic. Or you can get, like, of course, cold damage. That'll be good too. But mainly why we're running this is so that we get the 6 strength and attunement, which helps us out with all our scaling. And of course, the flat damage. Since we're scaling into percentage damage that is generic, like elemental damage over time, or spell damage if you had an active totem, and the increased damage from attunement, we don't care if it's spell lightning, spell fire, or spell cold, as long as it's an elemental version so that we get the elemental damage over time on it. It doesn't matter. So this gives us a lot of flat, which is really strong. Obviously the cold pen is really strong, the cold shred, but like extra flat is extra flat, right? And you could run a shield here. You could definitely run a shield, take those 5 points out of the axe node as well. You could go into like other stuff, get some more attunement. You could like go into hide skin. But if you want to deal damage, this is the way to go. You could also run a staff, but your attack speed will be absolutely atrocious. So I don't know how you'd get away with that. Oh, I'm so tired. Get away with that. But yeah. Ring, attunement, increased damage, probably increased elemental damage over time. You can turn that into strength if you want to. And of course, resistance or crit avoid. Then for the belt, you don't need mana regen. You could probably go with cleanse, then increase damage over time, HP. That should be increased HP though. The sapphire ring here. Oh, you do want a bronze belt. You want to make it a priority to get a bronze belt because since you have so much freaking strength, I can show you right now. Look at how much armor I lose if I take this off. I get 4% increased DR just by putting on the bronze belt with like 60 armor. So that tells you how much increased armor we have from our strength. Then the ring, I got really lucky with this ring, like really damn lucky. Too bad it's not on the right base, but that plat 12 strength is amazing. The increased damage over time is amazing. Then resistance, endurance. Gloves here, you don't want that attunement there. You want attack speed, and these would be perfect. Other than that, you definitely want attack speed on the gloves. One thing I did before I swapped to these was I was using wing guards, which makes you attack much faster and makes it feel a lot better. But my problem is it didn't have any life on it, and I wanted more life, and I wanted crit avoid, so I went for these instead, and they seem to be doing well. But I would heavily suggest trying to fit a wing guards, and you can always do a legendary potential wing guards with attack speed, with strength on it, whatever you need to do. Slam that wing guards in there, but this is what I'm using right now for now. Of course, the boots, strength, or attunement, depending on what you need, movement speed, HP. Then, of course, relic, attunement, elemental damage over time, or strength, and then resistance. And that's pretty much it for the gearing. As you can tell, my gear is absolute trash, but I tried to make it as good as possible. I've made a few other items that are really good. I'll give you a little bit of a look here. We made a really good throwing attack ring. We made a really good solo golem ring. Solo golem like weapon, because you can use this to get the insane cast speed, the mini spell damage, and mini physical both apply to solo golem, like the bone novas. This sword is absolutely insane. We're gonna be duping this fucker when I get a rune of rune of creation. Obviously, my insane pair of gloves always. This is an insane helmet. Oh my god. When I go back and play a Shattered Lance Druid, like a Werebear again eventually, when I do the swipe variant, this is exactly what we're using. And of course, I have a helmet that I'm going to turn into a Artor's Legacy when I eventually get one. And of course, we have a few items here. We can despair. We're going to despair. This is really good for like judgment and stuff like that. This is really good for EQ Bear if you want to play EQ. Well, not EQ Bear, I guess not anymore, but like other builds that like require like cooldown. Like this build would do absolutely amazing with this helm, because since we actually bypass the cooldown, we want to be, mauling as much as possible, and this helm would be amazing. The problem is it doesn't have +2 Entangling Roots, which is sad, but it's like fine. This I'm going to turn into like a I'm going to seal that minion health and run minion health regen, which is really strong. The new crafting update's busted, by the way. I do eventually want to turn that into something. This I'm going to seal that health regen so that I can run hybrid health on this as well. This is for a frostbite druid eventually, and then this is just another thing I'm going to seal. This is really good for like a necromancer that's building into health regen so that they don't die. And that's pretty much it for like the gearing as well. I just wanted to show you guys that because like this crafting update's got me so hyped. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you're at, and bye.